So today, I'm going to show you how we're going to turn a massive walnut platter. Now this is a piece of walnut that I cut a couple of months ago, so it's going to be fairly wet. And during the drying process, it started to crack a little bit, which is okay. I fortified it with some super glue to help hold those together. So the first thing that we have to do is get this threaded onto the screw chuck, and then I'll walk you through the process of turning this guy into a big old platter. Okay, so let's talk about how we're going to turn this into a platter. The first thing I've done is I have trued this up. So now this is perfectly round based on where my faceplate and my tailstock are. Now we have to come back and clean up this face. Now it's important when you're turning something this large or even a smaller bowl blank to know that it's not going to be balanced when you first put it on. Truing up the outside is going to help balance it, as will facing off the front and the back of the blank. However, some blanks, even after you've done that, will not be completely balanced. That's because of different densities in the sapwood and the heartwood. So go ahead and keep the speed where you're comfortable at. This one's about 250. I'm going to try to get up to about 350 as I am doing the face here. So our next step is going to be to clean off this face. This face that is currently facing the tailstock is going to become the bottom of the platter. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn a mortise here for our chuck to go into after I've cleaned this up. And then I'm also going to add an OG profile to this. So this area up here will become concave, and then going into the mortise and the foot will be convex. So I'm going to go ahead and face this off, and then we'll start adding the OG. Okay, so after I went ahead and faced this off, for the most part, I left a couple areas that were not perfectly flat, but that's okay because we're going to cut an OG profile on this, and that's going to remove the rest of this waste. So I went ahead and faced it off and created this bevel. And really that bevel is just to help hog through some of that unbalanced material, even though, like I mentioned before, the sapwood in this is never going to cause this to be perfectly balanced. We can help balance it a little bit better by removing some of that meat. So I went ahead and did that. Then I can make a couple layout lines. So the first one I made was out here, and it's about 1/3 of the diameter of the platter. And that's where the concave portion of our OG will be. And then I made another mark, and that's designating where the foot will be. And then I also came in with the calipers and marked the chuck jaw diameter. And then with the parting tool, I can outline the outside edge of the foot, and then also create the recess for the chuck jaws. Now, once I created the recess, I went ahead and took my bowl gouge, went to a smaller size, and I removed the tailstock completely. And that's okay in this instance. Usually I like to have the tailstock in place just to keep everything solid and safe. But when removing this small material where the chuck is going to go, it's okay to remove the tailstock, in my opinion, and just take light cuts and hollow that out. And I did leave a little nub in there for the tailstock to push into, so I'm not putting a dimple in my finished area, which I still have some cleanup to do anyways. So now at this point we can go ahead and concentrate on our shape. And like I mentioned, this is going to be OG. So this bevel out here is going to become curved, and I'm going to do that with a fairly small bowl gouge. I'm going to do that by making swooping cuts from the center to the outside. That's the way the grain direction flows on a bowl or on a platter. So I want to be cutting with the grain. So I'm going to make that cut outside, and then I'll come in and blend in this into a nice, subtle, flowing curve. Now it's important as you are turning, especially with traditional tools like these, to make sure you're stopping and sharpen often. A sharp bowl gouge, even in wet wood that cuts fairly easily, a sharp gouge is going to leave you a much better surface. So I'm going to go ahead and tackle this OG, then we'll flip it around and look at the inside. Okay, there we go. So I have the platter bottom pretty much where I'm happy with it. And I've sanded it up through about 600 grit. Now at this point, I like to grab a little bit of sealer. I'm not going to apply a finish right now, but with this being kind of wet still, I like to seal the fibers. So to do that, I'm going to use just a little bit of shellac, and it's been thinned down, and it makes a great sealer, and it doesn't interfere with any finishes. So you see how that figure of that walnut really pops, even with just shellac on there. So once I get a little Danish oil on there, it's going to look great. So now I'm going to pull this off, take the faceplate off, I'm going to install the chuck and expand the jaws into the recess we made. The mortise is deeper than the foot is thick. And what I mean by that is the foot sticks up from the bottom about 1/16 of an inch. This mortise is about 3/16. If that mortise was the same depth as the foot thickness, the only material that that chuck would have to hold on to is the thickness of the foot, which is not a good hold. So we want to make sure that that mortise is deeper than the foot. Now that it's held, I am going to bring the tailstock in, and we're going to use the tailstock just to apply a little extra pressure, make sure that thing's seated fully before we open the jaws fully. There we go. So now I need to tackle facing this off, creating my rim, which again, the rim I'm going to make about 1/3 of the diameter of the entire platter. And then it's a simple hollowing operation. And I'm going to hollow using a combination of my bowl gouges and my mate tool. So I'm going to go ahead and get this spinning, face it off, and create my rim. So the first thing I did was face it off, get a nice flat face, and then I marked where I wanted the rim to be. And then I cut that in with a parting tool. Then shaping the rim was next, and I ended up with a little bit of a curve here, and it just feels nice as you hold it, and it kind of leads you into the center of the platter. And then as I started to hollow it, the platter told me it needed a little bit of a bead around the lip, so I went ahead and put one in there, and then I hollowed this out. And the hollowing's pretty easy to do with a bowl gouge, and I took most of that waste out of there, left a little nubbin for the tailstock to hold on to. Once I had that down to about as thin as I could get it, I pulled the tailstock away, and then used the mate tool to remove the rest of that nubbin and come in and make a couple cleanup passes. Then everything was easy to blend together with a bullnose scraper, just taking light passes, and really the scraper is just there to blend the tool marks together. Then it was on to sanding, and for large platters like this in the inside of bowls, I like to use a power sander. It's a sanding pad attached to a right angle drill, and this allows me to reach inside of bowls and really get good, precise sanding pressure where I need it. So now the only thing we have left to do is to add a little bit of finish and maybe some sanding wax. So let's go ahead and do that.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this tip, subscribe to the Woodsmith Shop channel. Every week we're adding new tips and great woodworking videos. So hit the bell to be notified. Plus, you'll find project plans and downloads in the description below.